Hey, Dad, want to start a podcast?
That's why we're here.
Welcome to Made in the Trade, a podcast about blue-collar jobs and trade school careers. I'm Cassie, and this is Chuck. Welcome to our intro episode, where you're going to get to know us a little bit and learn what the podcast is about. We're going to explore different trade school careers that you don't necessarily have to get a 4-year degree to do. These jobs typically are safe from AI, they pay well, you have good job security, and sometimes you can even start your own business. According to Statista, about 1 in 5 U.S. jobs face risks of AI automation. Like me, I got laid off.
You are, and we're vulnerable.
Yep, I worked in marketing. I went and got a master's degree, and I've been looking for a job for about 3 months and had 1 interview. The rest of my team got completely laid off and replaced by AI. And every day on the news, more and more tech companies are doing mass layoffs and replacing teams with AI. Great time to be alive, people.
We saw this coming on the South Park Into the Pandaverse year.
Yes, so if you go and watch South Park, Joining the Pandaverse.
Joining the Pandaverse or Into the Pandaverse or something.
This is a special from 2023.
Yeah.
And they explore what happens when we rely on AI for everything.
Like lawyers and attorneys and accountants are hanging around outside Home Depot begging the handyman for a day's work.
Oh, and while we're at it, this is Sweeney. He joins us in the podcast studio.
So he won't bark.
Yep.
Interrupt.
From time to time, you may see him pop his head up. He might rearrange. Bear with us.
He's a blue-collar worker.
Yes.
So he needs a job.
Oh, gonna have to put him on OnlyPause to pay this all these bills. We're gonna have to sell your feet pics, Sweeney. So growing up, I always thought going to college was kind of the path to the middle class. I went to... You guys sent me to the best school in the area. It just happens to be a private college prep school. I wasn't really exposed to a lot of trades as far as, like, we didn't have programs really where you could go do apprenticeships or like trade works. The path was college. And I think you and Mom...
It was college prep. That was, yeah.
And your mom kind of pushed me to that because neither one of you went to college. So I think you kind of had the idea of like, oh, college will make life easier because you've done so many trades. Mom kind of went back and forth before she found her career as an esthetician, which is a trade. So I think you guys kind of saw college like, oh, I wish I had done that. Life would have been easier.
When you were going into college, that was just what everyone was expected to do out of high school. You were supposed to, trades were not being, but you weren't a candidate for a trade anyway. That's not something that would have pushed you into other than maybe a specific, like esthetician or hairstylist, or if you'd had interest in that type of thing, I think I would have been okay with it.
What he's saying is I'm not naturally a handy individual. So I didn't have a lot of those kind of skills where it's like, oh, I could go be a carpenter.
Keeping you off the stripper pole. That was the objective.
Honestly, I don't even think that was an option because I'm not a good dancer.
Yeah, well, I never went to those places, so I wouldn't know. But anyway.
But my mentality was I knew I kind of was expected to go to college. That's what all my friends were doing. And I was naturally good at school, very introverted, high anxiety, so I could read, write. I didn't like group projects or anything. But for some reason, I was really into theater. And I had it in my head that I should go to film school because I was going to be on Broadway, despite the fact that I cannot sing or dance.
You weren't the triple threat.
I had maybe 1 threat, maybe, on a good day. So I was super into theater. That's where I was putting all of my energy. I had really bad separation anxiety, though. I didn't want to leave you and Mom. Like, I wasn't like, I'm going to go to LA. Like, I thought best chance scenario was New York, 2-hour flight. But you and Mom kind of pushed me. We were like, at least get like a 4-year degree. You can kind of explore theater on the side because it's not something you necessarily need a degree for.
And it's a long shot.
Yeah, it's like not many people make it. And if you get a degree in film, like, what are you going to do with it? There are people that are very successful.
Yeah, you never know.
So I chose psychology, the winning undergrad that is psychology, which is basically film school because not a lot you can do.
I was pushing you to be an insult comic, but I thought that had a promising future.
I think you're trying to live vicariously through me because I'm not that funny. I got my 4-year degree in psychology. I went to the closest public university, like physically to my parents. It was an hour and a half away. I came home every weekend. I wasn't into the college experience. I don't know if I was even learning anything. And then graduated early because I was just trying to get it over with. I looked young, didn't have the confidence. I'm trying to do interviews, not landing anything. So again, super introverted, didn't want to go too far away from home. So I found a like 2-year program and getting a master's in mass communications that was completely online, and it was like relatively affordable. So I did that, and I freelanced like a little bit while I was doing that. And then I graduated from that. It was 2016. Still couldn't really find like a job, probably because of where we live. We live in like more like a smaller town.
You're forgetting your career in hostessing. The hostess was the mostest.
I did have a great career working for 2 years as a hostess at the local restaurant, which was the talk of the town. But again, probably should have asked for a raise. Could have been a server, but just did not have the confidence of the people skills. So only thing
Tough life. It's tough life.
I didn't have anything to fall back on. So it wasn't like, I was like, oh, can't get a job. Let me be a server. Couldn't even do that. Best case scenario, I'm a hostess making minimum wage. So I decided to freelance because the only thing I'm like good at is kind of writing. So I freelanced on and off working like some like local companies, but I really just had it in my head. I wanted to work from home. So I was, holding out for management, trying to find a work from home job that paid really well, which I did.
Eventually you did, yes.
3 years ago, I landed my absolute dream job. Company was based out of San Francisco. They didn't like change the pay based on where you live. So I was making a San Francisco salary, living permanently like in a small town in Florida. But then I was just traveling, me and this little guy. We'd go get Airbnbs. I stayed for 3 months in Europe. I went to Spain, France, stayed in New York, stayed in San Francisco, living my best life. And then the first talks of AI came around. I'm like, oh no, this is not good for me.
Ironically, from your brother.
Yeah, my brother works on the other end of it where he's more technical, and he kind of like markets the AIs, builds them. And he kind of knew this was coming, and he's like, hey, you're going to be one of the first cuts. Like, it's not looking good for you. You need to be the person that manages the AI, because in his mind, there's going to be people that are wiped out by AI and then people that manage the AI. So if you're not learning how to use AI, you're going to be obsolete.
Susceptible to it.
Yeah, so been looking for a job. I'm like, okay, maybe I can make like a career shift, because at this point I'm like a copywriter, content writer. I'm like, I just don't know how secure my job is. And then this past February, my whole team just got laid off because the company was kind of vulnerable to AI, so they're having to make like a lot of shifts in order to stay competitive. And then here I am looking for a job. I'm like, wow.
An industry that's susceptible, not just a company, but the whole industry of writing. Arguably any industry that's not doing something hands-on is kind of vulnerable. They're saying accountants, lawyers, any of these people could be vulnerable.
And typically, like when companies in tech do big layoffs, marketing's one of the first to go. Like they just tend to make budget cuts to marketing because they see it, for whatever reason, it's not something necessary, even though we're generating the revenue. So kind of knew it was coming, been saving up, but I did just buy a house and then boom, laid off. So I'm like, this is great. So I'm starting to look for jobs, and I'm just noticing that they're just not there. Like I applied to one job and it said there was 498 other applicants because so many people are in this position. The companies are shifting how they operate. So I found that when I'm applying to jobs and looking at like the role requirements, it's just so much different than it was 3 years ago when I was applying to jobs. Like instead of having these like fun creative roles, a lot of it's focused on like building content engines using AI. And I'm like, that's not what I want to do. Like, I don't want to just be throwing, an article like, oh, this is the outline, putting into ChatGPT and then editing it. Like, I really like the hands-on writing. So it's just like an industry shift. So like retrospectively, I'm like, I have a lot of student debt. Would I have been better off going into a trade?
Quite possibly.
But you had kind of the other end of it where you never thought college was an option.
I was, and not thinking college, not having any clue other than wanting to graduate. And the big question mark was, what are you going to do afterwards? I didn't even think about it till literally I quit. The day I graduated, I was supposed to work. And my friend worked at it was a fish fry, like Long John Silver's, Captain D's. And then he's like, you got to be at work today. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I just graduated. So he's like, well, then you're going to be fired. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with that. I was just summer. I was going to take it off. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew what I wasn't going to do. And that's go to college or anything like that. So
we still have like very different like academic styles. Like I was very much like, I read for fun. Like you're very much more like a hands-on person.
I was into cars and partying and going to the beach and having fun and living life. And, only thing I would work is to get money to do those things. That was the only object of working, is the quickest way to grab money to do what I wanted to do. I'd always done stuff in, sixth, seventh grade. I was a shed mover, where we'd move these sheds into people's yards where, in that I learned how to take apart fences and dig holes, mix concrete, roll a shed on PVC pipes, which is amazing because kind of a scrawny kid, didn't have much power, but they'd hire me and one of my friends, and we'd drive sometimes an hour and a half to deliver a shed and put it in people's yard. I'll never forget one time we delivered the shed, and it was way down past Fellsmere. I mean, in the middle of nowhere on a farm. And the lady offers us something to drink. And I'm like, yeah, I'm dying. Kids, we don't bring thermoses or any of that in the car. She literally brings us a pitcher of water, and it had tadpoles swimming in it. She had dipped it out of the pond, and I'm like, okay. And it tastes like sulfur, but yeah, I drank it. Yeah.
Did you eat a tadpole?
No, they stayed at the bottom. But I guess that's what they did. They just dipped out of the pond.
Maybe it eats the bacteria or something.
I don't know. I didn't ask a lot of questions. I just thought it was strange. But...
Did your stomach survive?
Oh, yeah, it's fine. Mosquitoes didn't bite me for like a week. But
So I feel like it was just like a different time back then. There was like less red tape. You weren't worried about paying cash to a 14-year-old to like build a shed.
Yeah, I know. We deliver them and had good times there. We had some funny times, and it'd be me and my friend who lived by me and Steve, and we'd crack up the whole way and make fun, and we had a good time doing it, but it's hard work, So right off the bat, hard work job. Then in the same summers after that, there was a job my dad got me. There was a guy doing oyster harvesting, and that was another brutal one because we'd leave at 6 o'clock. So I had to be there by 6, which means you're driving there in the dark, and it's down there in Grant, which, not a bad ride, but 20 minutes. 10 minutes.
It's like rural Florida, kind of
on the river. Anyway,
on the river, pretty,
go out
but
and
not a lot there.
Harvest oysters and throw them onto a barge and then shovel them onto a bigger barge. So shoveling oysters with a snow shovel. And we'd have a pile, that could fill this room. Then we'd take them out to this lease. You'd lease the land like an acre and a half in the river, and it'd be marked, and we'd go drop them there because you'd harvest them in the summer, but you'd put them on a lease to harvest them in the winter months. That's when you harvest oysters. They're thin and runny in the summertime, and they're more edible, I guess, in the wintertime. But anyway, that was a interesting, hard job. But there again, paid cash, long days, but fun. Driving in the river. There's worse things.
You definitely hustled more than me. Like I wasn't. You and Mom weren't sending me over the summer to do labor-intensive jobs.
Like I say, it was a paycheck, and you'd do anything. And then I went into like dishwashing, fry cook, that type of stuff during high school.
And didn't you almost work in a morgue?
That was very brief. Yeah, almost, but it wasn't my thing, When they talked about giving you a pager, I think back then, was it a pager or somehow or another, they're going to get a hold of you in the middle of the night and ask you to go to pick up a body at like Trinity Towers or wherever where someone had died, and then bring them into this room and just drop them off. Like, you'll get in a vehicle, you drive, you have a problem with that? I'm like, oh, no, that's fine. But then I started thinking about it. In the room you drop them in, it's like a shed out back of this place. And it was dark, and the light switch, you opened up the doors, and the light switch is all the way on the other wall. And they just put them on the bodies on these tables. I'm like, so in the middle of the night, I'm going to walk into this place, walk across there with no flashlight, turn on this light, dump this stiff? Nah. Yeah, so that was
That's a hard no for me.
Yeah, I would do it now. I wouldn't think twice. But back then, 16, you're like, no.
How was the pay?
It was minimum wage. Yeah. If it had paid per stiff.
For the right price, I thought you would have done it, but any more than
them on the side of the road. Yeah. Anyway, there was things like that. Eventually, electrician was it, and that was the actual trade. Like, learn this trade. And it was mostly residential wiring houses. You had to learn. Started off not knowing anything about it,
Because that's the two options, right? To be an electrician, you either have to go to school to get...
Yeah, there's like trade school, but that's at night, a lot of it. So you work as an electrician all day and then go to school. Yeah, that was no. So I just always went on the job, jump right in.
Apprenticeship.
Yeah, there was apprenticeship, and it's, I think it's union and stuff, but I never even looked into it because I'm like, I'm not going at night. That's when I'm going out partying. So, you know what I mean? That's when I'm going to spend the money I just made.
Recurring theme.
Yeah, I mean.
Different priorities.
Yeah, but that is where you really learn, a lot of good information. But you can also learn what is necessary to do the job on the job. You can learn as you go, work underneath a journeyman, and, you can, it takes about 2 or 3 years to get up to speed, but some people longer, some people never get it, But I learned pretty quickly.
You were mechanically inclined, you're tinkering, you're doing all these things.
Yes, like I could already, like put stereos in cars and stuff.
You were a hot rod guy. You and your friends, like, where I'm like playing
so
basketball, you're
learning a lot.
You're hot rodding.
Just from interest, because like that didn't come from my father or my mother or anyone like that. My father had zero mechanical inclination. He was not, he was a pastor and did, that type of work his whole life. He never did anything hands-on very good, or, he struggled to fix a leaky sink.
He was very best man ever.
Yeah.
Physically
great.
awkward.
Yeah.
He just wasn't.
He was not.
He was not the most athletic.
Yeah, not the
handy,
hands-on, fix the leak in the
sweetest
sink.
individual.
Yeah, or figure out what's wrong with the vacuum cleaner or anything like that.
So you were kind of the one fixing stuff around the house. You were the youngest, but probably if something broke, you're doing it because Papa's not doing it.
Yeah, I remember like really early age, my mom's sewing machine had like a gas pedal and it had nothing in full, and it was supposed to go slow and then go fast, when you do the stitching. And it just went from zero, full blast. It had nothing in between, a dead spot. And I took apart the little pedal and I could see it was a step resistor. And I'm like, oh, I see. And it was just worn out. Like, it'd been worn too much and it's just a brush that runs across these, spots. And it didn't touch on a few of them. So I just dropped solder on them, fixed that. And she was so impressed. And I'm like, so I would try fixing anything and I could understand stuff, take it apart. But electrician was first. And then, being a hot rodder, I'd started taking cars apart. And as an electrician, I wasn't making much money, honestly. And I even went and took a journeyman with a little crash. They do what do they call it?
Like a prep course?
Prep course, which is, basically they give you the test, like you'll see a question like this. And that was, I think, 2 nights a week for 6 weeks or something like that. Journeyman prep course. And it's kind of intimidating because all the people I worked with, including my boss, like they had failed the journeyman's test or the master's test, 4 and 5 times. And I'm going, is it that hard? So anyway, I go pass it first try, 78, and then I was like, oh, I should have taken the master's because there's only like 6 more questions or something. Anyway, long story short, passed that. But I was only making, I think, maybe $8.15 an hour. And I'm wiring houses in Palm Bay, usually by myself. And the only saving grace there is occasionally if it was a small little house, 900 square foot wood frame, my boss was at least cool enough to say, hey, you get this done, go to the beach. So, certain homes, oh, great, pull up to it, boom, 1 o'clock, I'm at the beach,
But it's different now because I know, like, I have a friend who is an electrician, and they do make better money now than they do, like, back then. So now it's a trade that's more valuable.
This is the 80s. The trades weren't paying well because construction wasn't crazy like it is now, it was kind of stagnant. And we didn't seek out my friend, the same one that used to deliver sheds with, worked at the fish place and all that. He chose a different path. He went to the Army, and then he came out, and he went to automotive school at BCC to learn automotive mechanics. And he had started, and he's working at a dealership. And me and him are still friends. We actually lived together for a while. We're still building hot rods and doing all that stuff. And he's just saying, dude, what are you doing as an electrician? And after the shuttle blew up, it really dried up. I was kind of sitting home doing nothing. We didn't have any work,
So a little pause here. So we live in Florida's Space Coast. So
Yes.
at the time when space was booming, like a lot of people came here.
Yes, things were doing okay. And then we had kind of a recession or whatever right after the shuttle blew up. And I didn't have nothing going on. So I was just tired of being an electrician, going out in the middle of nowhere, wiring a house. There's no social, and I felt I was drowning. I want to be around people, have fun. It's no fun to go out in the middle of Palm Bay in the middle of August and sweat your balls off wiring a house. Anyway, and I was over it. So I go do this evaluation, kind of like, no, your aptitude test. And, well, you do like doing that, maybe police or firemen. I'm like, oh, okay, well, what's that about? And he's like, well, this and that. The firemen start 6 months now, but police, there's a couple spots open. You can go in the police academy like in June or something. And I think that was 2 months away or something. And I'm like, I'd never thought about it, but I'm like, sure, sign me up,
And what's the commitment for that? The academy, like how long is it to go to police school?
The total hours, I think, was 680 hours. So it was maybe 8 months or a year, but you're there 5 days a week, in and out. But anyway, long story short, out of the blue, next thing you know, I'm going to be a police officer. And I did well in the academy, shockingly. But, I finished like top, I think it was number 5 out of like 32 or something like that. But anyway, and that's written.
And didn't you have the best shot? Weren't you the?
Yeah, I was one of the top. I was 3 in marksmanship.
So this is about the time you met Mom, right?
Yes. So there was that complication too. And
She'd love to be called a complication, by the way.
well, it is, it's
It's a commitment.
it's commitment here in a new relationship. Anyway, I'm realizing I'm doing this out of order. But anyway, did that, graduated, didn't get hired like I was promised. Took a little while. They hired me last minute notice because Palm Bay was going through some stuff. Anyway, long story short, it didn't work out. So that was a waste of time and money, but not a regret because it was also kind of fun, It's kind of like boot camp light,
You got the camaraderie that you were kind of looking for.
Yeah. And,
making friends.
I was blasting through, like the physical stuff. I was killing it. I was in good shape and that stuff was fun. It was, you had to run, you had to do push-ups, sit-ups. And like when they screened us the first day, I'll brag a little bit. They did how many push-ups you could do in a minute. And it's just like drill, a drill sergeant walking around, it's just like a boot camp. And they drop down and little kids counting, one of the other guys in the academy, and he was a little kid. And how many a minute? I did 93 in a minute, and that's pushing.
That's more than one a second.
Yeah, I was I was in good shape. So I did 93, and the drill sergeant come by, and he's writing down, he's like, how many did he get? And the little kid said, he did 93. And he's like, he did about 30 correctly. He didn't like. So anyway, yeah.
Let's get real. Do you think you could pass that test today?
Well,
could you do the push-ups,
I
sit-ups?
couldn't do 93 in a minute. I can tell
How
you
many
that.
do you have to do?
I don't know what the requirement was, but nobody was close. I think the next closest was like a kid did about 60.
Still insane.
One a second, yeah.
You're in pretty good shape now, though. I bet you could.
I couldn't do 60 push-ups. But, yeah. Well, if it was a challenge and there was like some, reason to do it, yeah. But no. Anyway, but what I couldn't do, I wasn't very good at running. That was the other thing. It's like, that's where the other kids shined. We did these 6-mile runs and stuff. And yeah, I was not a runner. But
we're not built to run.
No. But anyway, that was good times. And in between that didn't work out. So I did private investigating for a little while. And that was kind of fun.
Were you staking out people's houses? What are you doing?
It was more private investigating, doing like workman's comp fraud and automotive injury fraud, where people would claim that. Yeah, you go film them, you stalk them, and this is before the internet, so it was difficult, But there was a company out of West Palm, and they were hiring, and I got a job, and next thing I know, I'm following people around, filming them, and there were some good stories there. That was a good paying career, but there again, being in a young relationship, it's mostly weekends, you know what I mean, and it just didn't fit my lifestyle at the time, because there again, I'm still young and wanting to do this stuff, but the money was good. That was the best paying job I'd had up until that point. There's investigators there making $60,000, $70,000 a year in 1988, 89, whenever it was.
But it's a lot of sitting and kind of being by yourself again.
Yes, and you got to have a real good car. I bought a car that wasn't real good, and you end up all over the state, and they didn't pay. You're supposed to have like a zone or radius you work in, 60 miles, and they kept giving me jobs that were 130 miles out. I'm over in Brooksville. I'm over
Probably
in
not
Tampa.
in the best areas, too.
Oh, right? Yeah. I got chased out of several areas, and, if you get made, you don't get paid. That's the
so
thing.
If they find out that...
Yeah, if you're filming somebody, they figure it out, you don't have a case. You know what I mean? They've made you, you're done. But a couple of good stories there. Like one, I was in Orlando at an apartment complex, and I just went into the office, the rental office, and I started talking to the girl, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just looking for a friend of mine. So, and she's like, he's moving today. I'm like, what? Yeah. And she's moving today. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll go help her out. She's like, oh, yeah, they're in 104. I'm like, perfect. Anyway, I go down there, and I park there. There she is. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's her for sure. I start rolling tape, and she's moving. And she's supposed to have wrecked and messed her back all up and her legs and barely walk and stuff. And here she is loading the moving truck. And she's a pretty good big girl. And she comes out and she's put stuff on the truck, and her boyfriend's helping. And he wasn't a very big dude. Well, out he comes with a weight bench. And the next thing you know, he's got the barbell and the weight's still on it. And he can't lift it in the truck, and he's struggling. And she comes out, pushes him aside, and grabs the weight, and put it on the truck. And I'm like, yes. And I'm filming all this. I'm like, perfect. So yeah, that was a good job. But it was also, the bad part of that is I was sitting in a car in a hot parking lot, windows rolled up, pitch black tinted windows, and I'm sweating like I'm in a sauna, for 2 hours filming this. And you can have them cracked about that much to breathe, but you can't get made, so you can't.
We can't have the AC on?
That would be suspicious. And my car wouldn't have been a good candidate. It would have overheated and just wasn't, yeah. Now today with a, Tesla electric car, that'd be perfect.
Yeah. I'd be watching Netflix, just creeping on people.
Yeah. Well, I imagine today they do it with drones and robots and stuff like that. But back then it was old school. You had a video recorder and one of the big cameras you had to sit in there and hold. And that also gets rough, you know what I mean? Holding this camera and focusing in zoom lenses. And you take stills and still photos, and they'd pay you like $1 a minute for video or something like that. I forget what it was. And like $2 a still, something like that. And then, $30 an hour for investigative time, $20 an hour for doing the notes and stuff like that. Those aren't exact numbers, but I'm just saying that's how you build. I did 3 hours of surveillance, and that was a pretty good gig. But
I kind of wish you would have stuck with it. You and Mom would have been the cutest, like husband and wife.
I did take your mom one time to the beach. We had a client at the beach, and me and her sat up next to him, and I started filming like, "Hey, honey, how you doing?" But I'm really over her shoulder. She's not even in them. And I'm filming this lady and her kid going out swimming and stuff. But not a lot on that one. But, if you say you can't walk and you're walking and jumping in the ocean. But that was a decent gig. But that didn't work out either. And so anyway, go back to being an electrician, back at that.
Because that's one thing good about trades. Once you have a skill like that, you can always fall back on it because there's almost always a need, and that's what's
right. So
it doesn't change.
It was an easy door, and at that time, it was now probably the 90s and 89, 90, and things had picked back up, and there was some work going on. So, but I still wasn't making any money, and I'm like I say, I'm a journeyman electrician, and I'm still back, and I think, maybe I'm making $8.75 an hour, and my buddy who had been to automotive school, he's now working at a dealership, and he's making $65,000, $70,000 a year and crushing it. I'm like, dude, how, what's going on? And he's like, dude, you're just as good a mechanic as I am. We both work on the same cars. He's like, why don't you come try it? We got a position. Starting off, you'll be a transmission puller. You'll just R&R, it's called, take them out, put them back in. And there's a guy there that builds them. And he has a bad back, so he can't pull them out because that's the hard work. And I'm like, sure. So I didn't have tools or anything, but I showed up, met the guy, and he's like, okay, yeah, start. Here you go, pull the transmission out of this car. And I pulled transmissions out of my hot rods and stuff, so it wasn't too bad. But the first one was a front wheel drive, and it's like, oh, this is, because the whole frame comes out from under the car. You got to hang from a hoist the motor so it doesn't come out. Motor stays, trim. But anyway, I did it fairly quickly, and I'm like, that wasn't that bad. Now, bad news is it's hot. You're in a metal building, you're sweating.
No AC.
No AC. But I look around, and these guys are killing it. They're making money. And mechanics is different because it's paid on a flat rate. And I'll briefly explain that. But basically, I worked at a Lincoln Mercury dealership, and let's say you have a town car and it needs the transmission rebuilt. It pays, if it's a billing code, you'll say, oh, I pulled it out, diagnosed it, pulled it out, rebuilt it, flushed the cooler lines, flushed the torque converter. Anyway, all those are little billing codes, but all in all, it paid almost 13 hours to pull a transmission out of a town car, build it, and put it back in. Now, doing a lot of them, you could do 1.5 a day by yourself. I used to, once I learned it, and then, So if you do that in 5 hours, you get the 13. If you do it in 20 hours, you get the 13. So yeah.
What's the 13 based off of?
Well, that's another bone of contention. There was a book, and it's step by step. Step 1, disconnect the battery. Step 2, and that's how they paid. You follow the procedure in a book.
From the dealership?
Yes, there's a book for a town car. You open it up anyway. And that's how they used to do it. Now that changed, and that's why I got out of the industry. But, I got to where, like one time I had them time me and pull a transmission out of, I think it was a 92 town car with a 5-liter, which had the easier starter, 12 minutes from in the air. It was already in the air, but 12 minutes. I'm set, go, transmission out and on the table, getting ready to be rebuilt. So to be a specialist, wasn't as profitable as learning the whole car. And I was like, I'll learn the whole car. So I started doing air conditioning, and I started doing drivability, it's called. I just did everything. I wasn't going to be just, because a lot of these guys, like a front end guy or a, heavy line truck guy, they didn't have the ability, I would say, to expand because they were old school and things were changing rapidly. When the electronic transmission came out, I was there, came out in 92. I was practically brand new, but all of a sudden there's electronics in transmission. There never was up until that point. And these guys, it terrified them. But being an electrician, I kind of understood it. And that stuff didn't scare me at all. I'm like, this is my advantage. This is a strong play for me because these other guys are scared to death. Now you've got what? Electricity running into a train? What in the world is solenoid? And
imagine what they think of the cars now. Mine, all electric.
I'm so far behind it, it's terrifying me. I couldn't go, these hybrid cars and all that. I wouldn't know what to do.
But it's also, I think, mechanic has a great potential for being kind of an entrepreneur. Because if you have all your own equipment, you have the space. Like you've had friends, you try to have your own mechanic shop. It's just like the space requirement, the tools, and then getting the clientele.
Yeah, which that was a challenge because, like I say, I came out of a dealership where we did work on a lot of stuff. We were Jeep. Also, we sold Jeeps. And we sold, back then it was called Eagle. There was a brand. So I had some.
Never heard of Eagle.
Yeah, Eagle Talon and stuff. So anyway, and I had to work on some of those, but I was mostly Lincoln, So
there's a difference in working in dealership. You're specializing. And
yes, I was specializing. And that's where I made it. But then I went on my own, had my own business for a year, and I had to work on everything. But I was okay with that. And the guy I went into business with was like a genius. And, there was nothing he was afraid of or couldn't do other than transmissions. He wouldn't touch those.
For you.
Yeah. Some people are afraid of transmissions for whatever reason. But so, that worked out other than you were young. You don't remember, but I had my own business for a year. And we started off was going to be 3 guys. And one guy dropped out. And 2 guys to rent that space didn't make sense overhead wise. So we quit. It was in June, and then 9/11 happened just 3 months later, and every one of the guys in that shop plaza went broke. So that was good fortune that we closed it when we did. We did a year, didn't sign a new lease. My friend, he had a shop underneath his house. He's like, I'm just gonna work out of the house. It makes no sense to pay this rent. And I went back to the dealership. So I'm back at the dealership, and
it's almost always hiring. Like you can,
like I say, I went back to electrician. I went back to mechanic. If you've got the trade and you've got the skills,
it doesn't change that much. Like there might be technological developments where things change, but the trade, it's like the trade.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah.
You can take time off. You still know the skills.
Yes.
And also, it had the environment that you were looking for. Like, it's very much, you're not working like in a silo. It's very...
Right. It is more social. You got friends, like I say, my best friend worked there. And there was a time where we had a group of guys there that I think was the best. We would have competed in a national competition and won because we were the best. And that's my opinion, but I know enough about it because we would get, a reputation, and we had it. Like, there's a guy that comes around when you have a problem car, there's a rep from Ford that goes around and he covers like the state of Florida or whatever. We got the reputation that all of a sudden we're getting all the cars from all these other dealers that can't be fixed, and they're bringing them to us, which wasn't a great thing because it was time consuming and it didn't really pay well, It's called M time usually, and that's just straight. You work on it 4 hours, you get 4 hours, You're not beating the clock. But that was our reputation.
More of an ego boost, like not, that's okay, well, but it's like, we're the guys.
And literally, they'd come from Orlando, they'd come from Cocoa, they'd come from down south, and we'd get these cars that they couldn't fix, and the rep would come there and bring them in, and, it was an ego thing, but that was proof that we were good,
Good, but still, you're working at that time, you didn't have AC.
Right. You're killing yourself. You're
making good money.
Sloshing in your shoes. You're working, sweating, and it's brutal. You're out there in August. You go get a car out of the parking lot. It's steaming hot. You know what I mean? You can't sweat all over this customer's car. So they put this plastic in it, sticks to you. And then you go, I got to do the oil change. Oh, no one wants to do oil change. They don't pay any money. So you put this hot car in the air. It's steaming hot. You pull the plug, spewing hot oil on you. Sometimes these filters are replaced. It runs down your arm. It's just brutal. Oil change is no fun. And that's the bad of it, and it's like, oh my God.
And you're trying to start a family because I'm young at that time. And didn't they try to make you work weekends?
Well, that was the answer. Like I say, flat rate. So the flat rate used to be good. All right. And then about 96 through 98, Ford started putting out some cars that were junk. I got to be honest. There was the Ford Mystique, Ford Contour, Mercury Mystique. And these things were a little compact, and
that's why you don't see any of them on the road anymore.
You could not get to any of the parts or anything. So, like I gave the example of, 12 minutes, I could pull a transmission in a Lincoln Town Car, and it paid 13 hours. Total, pull it, rebuild it, put it back in, test drive it, send it on its way. Now here comes the Mercury Mystique, I'll take. And if it had the V6, it was a nightmare. You couldn't get to it. So to pull that transmission into Mercury Mystique, rebuild it, put it back in, I think paid only about 9 hours. And it took me 2 days.
And just because the book said it should take 9 hours?
They quit using the book. They just came up with these magic numbers. Superman was back there doing it or something. You know what I mean? They weren't realistic anymore. They were the opposite. They were unrealistic.
Well, probably to save time and trying to boost profits.
Ironically enough, Ford had just had one of his most profitable years.
Sounds about right.
Most profitable year. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to cut your times, And now I'm not making the hours I used to. I was making 70, 90, 110 hours some week, you know what I mean?
That's what you were
Flat
billing
rate.
for, yeah.
Yeah,
but you're
flat
not
rate.
working.
Yeah.
You're working 40 billing,
Yes.
100.
Yes. Now I'm working 40 and sometimes I'm getting 30, It's like it's going in the wrong, trending in the wrong direction. And the cars are a lot harder to work on. So it's even more frustrating. And it seemed to me Ford's answer was, oh, we're going to open Saturdays. So we can give me more time to make money. I'm like, that doesn't sound. So I'm going to have to work more to make less. Yeah. And that's when the floodgates opened and, 9 guys left the dealership. 9 of us left. And
so you saw all your friends leaving. Someone must have heard.
Yes. And, I wasn't the first to go, but they started going and, I'm friends with these guys. They're calling me up. Yeah, I'm working in air conditioning. We work what's called a 980 schedule. So we get every other Friday off. We get 3 weeks paid vacation, 1 week sick. We didn't even have vacation in mechanics, At the very end, when people started leaving, they started doing it. But until then, we didn't have paid vacation. Nothing, And like I say, now we're working Saturdays. And so now
you're missing time with your family.
Yeah. So working more, making a lot less, trending in the wrong direction. So we bailed, and we went on. A lot of us went to this defense contractor in town who loved us because we were hard workers. Like I said, we were a group of guys that I'd have put on, competed with anybody in the state or the country. We were that good. And we took that work discipline and work knowledge to the defense industry and they loved it. You know what I mean? We show up, we work hard, we're smart. You got to be smart. You can figure stuff out.
And what are you working as? What's your job title?
At Harris, I was called a technician D, which is the highest level technician.
So you didn't need training. So those skills you learned,
bring it right in. Yeah.
You were able to start day one.
Well, yeah. And the irony of starting day one, I walk into Harris and I've got hired because they, like I say, there's I think I was 6 out of 9 or number 5 out of the 9 guys that left. So the 5 they'd hired before me had done so well that they were like, yeah, the word is get any of these guys that want to come, hire them. Because these guys are really smart and really working out well. So they kicked down the door, opened up the door, and it was an easy process. Day one, I go into Harris, and it's not intimidating at all because I'm talking to the guys that are there. They're like, dude, this is nothing compared to what we did. We work in air conditioning. Everything's no rush.
It's like a cushy job.
Yeah, it's a cushy job. It was a pay cut, but it was cushy jobs. And first job, we're working on these containers, and it's running wire and stuff that my electrical background and my mechanical background just were a perfect match. So I instantly, rose to the top. And they let you, they're like, this guy knows what he's doing. You have to figure it out a little bit. And there's some things that I learned too. It's not like I knew everything, but I walked in there and saw what they're doing, could learn to understand what they're doing. But I did have to learn the quality of it. Now it's not, don't do this. This isn't going to pay you 10 hours if you do it in 5. We want it done right. Take your time. Take as much time as you need. Make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible, as functional as possible, and as good as possible. The challenge is to do it your best, not your fastest. So that was a little bit of a learning curve because we were all, let's blow through this. But no, take your time, do it right, make it repeatable, and they would listen to any input of, hey, how can we streamline this a little bit? What are we doing here that doesn't make sense? And I also worked in prototype labs that were just kind of like, here, come up with an idea to solve this problem. And there's engineers that have worked on this for years, and I mean years. And these are engineers that have, from Stanford and stuff, and they would listen to you, come up with an idea. Briefly, I'll just remember there was this very complicated piece of equipment that went to the bottom of the ocean. And it had stuff, let's say it's a box. I can't describe it too much, but it's a box with things coming in and out of it. And they were struggling with the seals to seal it off. And bottom of the ocean, a lot of pressure and a lot of water, you know what I mean? Water pressure pushing on. And I was a transmission guy. I'd worked with a lot of hydraulic seals. Transmission is a hydraulic assembly. All right. So I showed them, I'm like, well, the way you're doing this, I drew it up for them, and they came back, they're like, that's freaking great, dude. You know what I mean? They're like, we're going to try that, and it worked out, and they would listen to you, and it's impressive to have a guy that's, almost a PhD in science and this, and to listen to you, and you could still contribute, and you've got zero engineering experience, but engineers are a little bit different. Sometimes they are brilliant, but they don't think outside the box.
And they're doing like very theoretical. So as a technician, you're doing like the engineering work on like the hands-on aspect where they may be working like the theoretical, the math behind it, and you're like the one putting it together. And working in one of those big companies, I feel like it's a benefit of you can work your way up. So you might start at a lower level, but the pay raise, rather than just being a mechanic where it's more like, oh, you might work hard, you get to build more hours working in like a large corporation environment. You might start like a level 1 or a level B, and then the pay raises and stuff come from like kind of paying your dues and working. You can work your way up within a company.
Yeah, like I say, every other Friday off, I was in heaven. You know what I mean? That's when I was able to spend time with you and be the basketball coach and all that stuff.
Never missed a game.
Yeah, that was the fun of it. And working mostly in air conditioning, and 9-hour days, 4 days a week usually, and every other Friday off. And the Friday you did work was an 8-hour day, and things like that, benefits, the health benefits, the 401k, and things like that you don't think of. But, when I went there, I was 30 something, and that made a difference, you know what I mean? To contribute to a 401k and to, have good health insurance and things like that. That's sometimes the trades aren't that way. And to make a jump to a corporation like that, but without that trade background, I wouldn't have excelled at those. So
in my mind, I think of trades as more like entrepreneurial kind of contract work. Like sometimes you might be working as your own boss, you're working like per job rather than, it could be salary or hourly, but as working at a big corporation, it's usually like a salary position, set hours. You're working 9 to 5, you know exactly how much you're going to make. You might have a % bonus, but it's very fixed.
Harris, it was, there's salary and hourly. We were hourly. And we got overtime. So salary people weren't guaranteed overtime unless they worked, I think more than 10 or something hours. And then it's just flat where we were still hourly. We got time and a half, and like Sunday was double time. But it's still there was a lot of guys who milked that to when they wanted to work Sunday every Sunday, because they wanted that double time. I was just the opposite. I was more, where's the finish line? Because I want to go home and be with the family and, have a life. And so I don't want to be there on Sunday. Even if you do pay me double time, I'd rather finish this job in regular time. So,
but those big companies, a lot of times I feel like can offer that stability, predictability, the benefits. You do the layoffs every now and then.
Yes, there was that. But I briefly left Harris and went to another company, L3. And when they hired me, I was like, okay, when do I start? He's like, okay, you start tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, but what time do we get here? He's like, whenever you want. I'm like, what are you talking about? When do you start? He's like, whenever you want to get here. I'm like, what are you talking about? You don't have, he's like, no, we have what's called flex or our core hours. The core of your hours need between 9 and 5 or
Which makes sense because some people work really well in the morning. Some people you need to pick up the kids or you just.
And you got some people that want to show up at 6. Yeah. Some people, like say, have to drop off their kids or they just don't feel like getting that in there early. And I think I got in there at 7, But it was nice. There was no one waiting on you, because that was another thing at Harris. There was kind of some areas where they were kind of like that. They have to have a boss that has something to do, and if he can sit there and say, "Hey, I caught 4 people being late," and it's like they're paying this guy $100,000 to sit here and watch us $25 an hour guys be 5 minutes late. Wouldn't it be better if he was working? Not because he's not working. He's so. Anyway, that type of childlessness, just being ridiculous, I thought, now we're grown-ups, and that empowers people, and I find that people usually respond better, you know what I mean? You're putting in your hours, and if you're either, there's always the 2 types, the guys who, in mechanics, electrician, any trade I've ever been there's 2 types. The guys who show up late, and they had the flat tire, or their granny died, or, the dog ran away. It's just
always an excuse.
Always an excuse, and it's always them. Yeah. The world always picks on them. But then there's the other people that are always there early and get the stuff done and don't have excuses. And that's where you just draw the line. Be like, okay, well, I don't care about this. This is what you're doing. Be here. And the people that always have excuses, they end up getting laid off and aren't successful,
But one of the things I love about trade careers compared to like a desk job working in tech is that you kind of have to measure productivity based on output. Like it's not like if you're working like typing, like, oh, I type, I'm writing. Like you could be like, okay, you're monitoring productivity by time spent at a desk. People are looking at like, oh, that means you're working. But it's like, it's just that old school mentality of not measuring by output. But
yes,
when you're working in a trade like that, it's like, you can see it's like a hands-on, you're not just pretending to be busy. Like you are having to work.
Somehow, I think COVID changed the world and, internet changed the world. But nowadays, like you say, measuring productivity and old school was, oh my God, like cracking the whip. And I remember actually being when I was at Palm Bay Police and Harris had this thing where they wanted everyone to work at 7 o'clock. Well, think about that. You got 2,000 people on the roads back then were like grid trying to get to work at 7 o'clock, and there's wrecks every morning. So Palm Bay was like, hey, could you do something about this? Why don't you have like half your crew show up at 7, 7:15, 7:30? If you staggered it, we wouldn't have the rush hour and kids getting run over at bus stops and stuff like that.
And what if you have to drop your kid off at 8? What are you supposed to do in that hour between?
They used to be like tough crap, you know what I mean? And this hard line, and it was such a waste of resources to watch and, you know what I mean, to police that. Who's late? Well, you got usually the biggest boss there who makes the most money sitting there counting heads like, okay, I see you were 2 minutes late. It's like,
it's just so old.
That's not productive for him. Yeah. No. So the world kind of woke up and COVID kind of changed that. It's
and like work-life balance and treat people like human beings. If I'm just sitting at a computer, why can't I do that from home? Because then I don't have the commute time, less people on the streets, less money for me in commuting. Maybe I could take a little less salary because I don't have to commute. You know what I mean? Rather than sit 4-hour traffic, especially like California or something, it just makes sense to empower your people to do what they do at home. And you see the results. That's what the bottom line is. Yeah. And the company I worked for, they were remote first. So we had an office, but you were never required to be in the office. And they just did such a good job. I mean, we were salary. Like I was hourly, but guaranteed a certain amount of hours. So I was 35 hours a week, not going over that. But they measured productivity so well about like doing your job, not just like, oh, we're monitoring keystrokes. Like, no, you're doing your job. You're given the freedom, make your meetings, work on your time. So people spread all across the country. But that also meant that while you're sleeping, someone that you need to make, like I was writing, my editor she was in New Zealand once. So I finished my article, give it to her, and then I wake up and it's done because she's working on a different time zone. And like, it worked. And I was so thankful for my job because we had the flexibility and I was able to travel. I did my work. Like if you're happy about where you work and you feel thankful for your job, odds are you're going to be really good at it.
Be motivated and the world has changed and is still changing, but
now we're shifting back. So now I'm looking at jobs and a lot of it's hybrid. It's like you want to be 2 to 3 days a week in the office, which means you have to live near one of the big tech hubs. But there's so many layoffs. Like, do I want to go move to San Francisco, pay a ton of money for rent in a beautiful city? I love San Francisco, one of my favorite cities in the world. But it's expensive to live there. I'm like, okay, I'm getting paid a lot. But if I get laid off, do I have 6 months of savings on an apartment that's $3,000 a month?
Yeah. Now, some of those jobs, you might have a year's severance or something. But
yeah.
And that's blue collar doesn't compete with that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Blue collar is pretty much show up on time. I'm guarantee you all the electricians are going to want you to be there at 7
They're
o'clock.
in-person jobs. They're not remote jobs, but you have the security.
Hands-on are going to be a little more strict about that because there's no remote electrician. You know what I mean? You don't work from home. You go out, you fix things. And
so you're going to have to commit to a location. You kind of know where you live. You can't do like me and go get Airbnbs month to month. Unless you're doing something like a handyman working, like you worked on Thumbtack. And you could put like, oh, I'm in this area.
Yeah.
I can do these jobs, but it's not the same as a remote tech job where you can work anywhere, but those jobs might be going away. So in the next 5 to 10 years, is that a viable career path where it's worth,
I don't see where a lot of trades are going to be vulnerable. What are they going to have? Robots come out and wire your house? Well, what if the robot breaks down? Who comes out and fixes the robot? Oh, another robot. Okay, well, what if that robot? Eventually, somebody's got to build and understand the robot. You know what I mean? There's always got to be a human and who checks it, who makes sure this robot didn't get hacked.
I don't think people want robots in their house. If I need a plumber, I don't really want some random robot just coming poking around.
And that's a long way off in my opinion.
So it's secure, but you're not going to have the cushy work from home tech life. But I don't have that anymore anyway. It's like,
I could see a time when a robot would come out and like your sick has a problem, and he goes out to his robot car and 3D prints the part. But that's so far in the future,
And the cost to like make that, it's just for the time being. I think for the foreseeable future, the trades are a really viable career path. So that's kind of the point of this podcast. Each episode, we're going to talk to someone in a trade. We're going to explore like what the average salary is, what like the schooling, if you need to learn on the job, if you need to go to like a training program, how you get there, how much you're making, what the day-to-day life, like what is it actually like to be a car salesman, mechanic, what's the day-to-day life, what's the good about the job, what's bad, so you can just kind of see what it's like because you might be, whether you're changing careers, you got laid off like I did, you're coming out of college and you're not sure what's next. College, it can be great, it can be an amazing experience, but the way things are changing, it might not be your best option. Like I didn't consider like, oh, could I have killed it as a massage therapist? An esthetician might be in a better position if I'd been a plumber. They actually make a ton of money. Yeah. I just never considered that.
Yeah. And if there's any people out there that want to come talk to us and pitch a good career, a good
slide in those DMs. I want to hear from you. If you do something great, if you put makeup on a dead person, I want to hear about it.
Yeah.
If you got a weird career that pays really well that you didn't have to go to college for, let us know. We'd love to talk to you.
Picking up dog poop that are crushing it.
Yeah. I saw a thing. People are charging $25 an hour, even more, to go pick up dog poop.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I want to hear about it. I want to know what that's like. Dog walker in New York, you make $100,000 a year. I want to talk to you.
There's some gigs out there that really pay, and then do blue collar.
Yeah, I think blue collar's back. You will have it made in the trade. Blue collar's back, baby. AI is coming for your jobs. So
the Pandaverse.
So keep watching. We have a few episodes. Yeah.
And this has been fun. I've learned a lot from just doing this. I hope you have. And this is more in your wheelhouse than mine. But like I say, I'm a jack of all trades. And
I am unemployed, so I've got nothing better to do than do a podcast with my father.
Yep.
So thanks for listening, if anyone did. This is Made in the Trade.